Hey gang, welcome back to Tin Man Customs, and looking at my next project here, we're going to work on creating G1 Backstreet in a Titans Return figure, or create him to be like a Titans Return figure with the Headmaster gimmick. And I'm going to use the RID Blur figure that just came out this year. I really liked the vehicle mode on him, and his robot mode. It's it's a simplistic sort of figure since it's more of the RID line, but he's got a nice large canopy area, which should be able to house a Titanmaster in there, and I mean, you can already see there's a huge gap into the cockpit, and I might have to modify his legs in there in order to fit the Titanmaster in there. Let's see here. I am going to use one of the extra Nightbeat Titanmaster figures I have, but for head mode, I'm going to have to do some sculpt work on this guy, as I really don't want the grimace face that he's got going on. Now, I don't recall Backstreet being in the cartoon, or not even sure I remember him being in the comics or not. So I've seen illustrations of him where he's actually got a face with a mouth and nose, and not one that has a visor and a mouth shield, but I'm not sure how much of that detail is showing through on the camera. But the original figure had more of a helmet with a mouth guard, like a knight or something. So I figured I'm going to go with the figure version of the head, because this is really my only connection to the character, and I liked the figure. I liked the vehicle he turned into. This is all a little bit silly looking on his head, but that's very G1. And he was a trigger bot, which meant he has flip-up cannons over his shoulders. I'm not going to attempt to do a spring-loaded cannon system on this guy, but I'll get to his weapons in just a sec. So, head-wise, I'm going to have to sculpt on, cover up the mouth a bit, and put in more of a visor look on him. But the exterior here of his helmet was similar to that guy. I may have to add some fins on the front of it, but that should work. That head should work pretty well. Let's see, since Backstreet was not a headmaster in the original ones, I'll have to come up with a name for his little Titanmaster buddy there. Now, cannon-wise, I've got a couple options. Let's see, because he's got this fin back here, which in robot mode these flip back. So I could have cannons mounted on those to when he gets into robot mode, they could fold back like that, and then they would be on his shoulders. I've got a couple options. I've got these cannons that were in my bin of bits that are, I believe, gun tips off of a backpacks cannon system that came with Transformers Energon bulkhead, and I never used the system that these were on. It just looked weird on the figure, so I believe those parts are all gone, but I kept the weapon tips because they look like pretty cool cannons. So that might be a nice look. And I also just came across from a thrift store haul this Ravage from the movie line, and he's got these nice posable cannons back here on some arms, so I may try to remove these arms and incorporate them into the back side of this guy. So he's got cannons that would at least either fold backwards or flip up or backwards, sort of similar to that. But like I said, they're not going to really be spring loaded. I don't have anything to dismantle and actually build a spring loaded system, because this is my G1 figure that goes on my shelf. Stickers are all pretty worn out. I may get some repro labels for him down the line, because like I said, he's just kind of a fun looking figure, especially in the car mode. I always liked the more Cybertronian futuristic looking cars when they came out, like Hot Rod and the Technobots. They were always really cool. So let me get this guy pulled apart. Literally pulled apart there. As you can see, dismantling this guy is going to be really easy. And the canopy, I mean, it folds way open. So that should be really easy to try and get the Titan Master to fit in there. And so this guy ends up proportionately similar to the original figure, where the front end of the vehicle is where the feet are. He should be pretty easy to have the color combinations line up in both robot and vehicle mode like the original toy does. And I will have to cut into that and make a port for the head. Shouldn't be a problem. We've done it on a number of other figures. But as I was saying, these fins end up on his shoulders, so I may just mount something on. Real simply, I could just mount those on the tops of those fins, and he'll have his shoulder mounted cannons. It might be nice, like I said, to get those arms on there to where the cannons could fold backwards during vehicle mode, so it looks more like they're jet propulsion, and then when we transform them here, you can flip them forward, very similar to that. So I'll figure that out as we go, but at this point it's time to get this guy taken apart, and I will probably pull those weapons off just to try and mess with them and see what option is actually going to work. So I will go ahead and get this cleaned up, get this guy taken apart, washed up, and ready for painting. Alright gang, so here he is. He's got all his base colors on him, all the spray painting that is. And let me see, I already ended up sculpting his head, and I didn't put any of that on video because it was a little too close working on him. I typically use this magnifying lens and sit hunched over that while I'm working on it, so you would have just seen the back of my head while I was working. But I'll talk through a little bit what I did, if I can get it to focus. Alright, so this was the Nightbeat head, and basically sculpted in using the Fix-It sculpt. Gave him the mouth visor, or the mouth shield, not a visor, and the fins on the front of the head there were cut out of a leftover plastic robes from, I believe, an X-Men, a Toy Biz X-Men figure, and just glued those on and then cut all the excess away and sanded it up. Now my Fix-It sculpt is, I think it's very outdated because it was not sculpting as well as it normally does, and a lot of that ended up with some crudely bumpage through there. There's no, tried sanding it down and it started taking chunks out of it. So got rid of that and ordered some new stuff, but I'm hoping that holds together all right. I do think this guy needs to have some black outlines around the eyes and maybe around the sides of the visor, just to pull out some of that detail. So I've got some Gundam markers, detail markers I'll probably use on that. But there's that. The head still needs a little paint, extra paint on that. The orange wasn't covering up that color as well as I had hoped. But that's pretty much him. So now we just got to get to the details on his chest and the rest of his legs. There's some little bit of crud going on when I spray painted it. It was really windy last night. I probably should have just waited, but I already feel like I'm behind on this video, so I went ahead and spray painted him anyway. So fortunately, some of the blemishes are where I need to paint in his extra colors. Like he's got, I don't know how well it shows up, it's really reflective, but it's kind of a reddish color with some silver pinstriping on his hood. So I'm going to pull those colors into his hood and get the tires all painted black with some silver. His shoulder cannons are we're going to paint those gunmetal gray with probably a dry brush of silver over the top of them, just to get them to look a little bit more chrome. They're not going to look chrome, but they'll be shiny and silver. And so I'm going to get some of this stuff cleared out of the way. I've got to make a decision on the windshield as well. I've been painting it with a translucent smoke color, and I've already got probably 10 layers on there, and you can still see brush strokes in it. So I might try a few more coats with the translucent color, but if it doesn't even out, I'm just going to end up painting it solid black like his windshield is in the original figure. So I'm going to get started, and you are going to go into some fast forward. Alright, gangs, here he is with his G1 counterpart, and overall, I really dig this guy. I always liked the old toy with his very futuristic Cybertronian sports car look, and I really thought this mold here pulled that off. I think I ran into a heck of a lot more problems with this figure than I thought I would, for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and move him out of the way here until we until we go to see him in robot mode. This guy surprised me with how many issues came about, from painting just to some mold issues. The biggest problem was some of the paint application, which surprised me because I figured this guy would be pretty easy because he was really simple to take apart. But I'm not sure if it has to do with maybe a cheaper quality of plastic used on this line or what. But there were several problems with the spray paint where when you first applied it, it completely sloughed off of the figure. Even if there was some primer on there, it just wouldn't stick, especially to the whole hood of the vehicle. And let's see. Oh, I had gone in trying to use translucent black on the canopy, which I had used transparent paint in, or translucent paint in one of the other mods I did, and it worked beautifully. This guy, the paint completely just buggered up on the inside of it and ended up peeling off, so I painted it solid black, which emulates the original figure, but I was really hoping to do a translucent on there. The black paneling, this was a mess. It even after being painted on there and drying overnight, as soon as I went to transform him, the whole thing just smeared right off of there. So that is as fixed up as I could. The orange on his hood was a mixed color orange, so trying to remix the color and match that was next to impossible. That's why it's not as super clean there. But I really like this color scheme on the figure. I did on the original toy, but I didn't realize how much I liked it until I got into here and got it all painted up with the different silver and the white and the gray on there. Now, the cannons on the back here were taken off of that movie Ravage figure, and I had to cut out and insert some plastic straw liners inside of that in order to get the weapons to stay on the figure. So on the original one, he would have it in the back as thrusters, flip the guns, flip the button, and that could pop up. Now, as I said earlier in the video, it's not going to be spring loaded, but we can flip these around gently or they will pop out. And I knew that was going to pop out as soon as I started filming, because it wasn't popping out at all on me while I was messing around with that earlier. Never does. It always happens when you're filming. So, threw on some red paint on the back for some lights there. But it works. So, we'll get this guy transformed real quick. Headmaster partner fits inside there. Doesn't sit like I had planned, but he will lay in there and fit just fine. His paint scheme, I tried to invert his paint scheme from what Backstreet's main robot paint scheme is. version. Tried to stick similar color schemes, and I liked this mold. Ended up working with that, being able to, the way he transformed, being able to line up elements similar to the G1 version. The orange is definitely darker on this guy, but I couldn't find as pale an orange in the Tamiya brand spray paints, and I definitely wanted most of the orange on this to be a spray paint. Ended up obviously having to paint some of the stuff on the hood, which was unfortunate, but overall I really dig the way this guy ended up looking. And he still has his blasters up on his shoulders like this guy, and the head turned out fine on the robot mode, even though we had issues with the Fix-It sculpt being old and kind of crumbly. Ended up putting some clear coat on there to kind of hold that all together. Put a lot of clear coat on his actual Titanmaster's head in order to not tear up the paint as much by putting it into the neck port there. And so far that's holding up just fine. I may have to put some more clear coat on there, I'm not sure. I also put clear coat on all of the black line work that I had done with the Gundam paint markers. Those that I don't know why those were so smudgy on this particular model. Like I said, it may have something to do with the kind of plastic used in him, but overall, I really dig him. So here he is, my Titans Return version of Backstreet, and his partner either Triggered or Sync. Still not sure what I'm going to call him, but probably leaning more towards Triggered since he was originally a Trigger bot. So here he is. Give me a thumbs up, a comment, and subscribe if you really like what you see here, and let me know what you think. I'd love to see some comments on what you think of this guy and what you would like to see on the channel. If there's other characters you would really like to see done, let me know. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and be sure to come back because there will be other figures in the works.